We're here to talk about application insights. It says, what's happening in my app, and we're going to use application insights, which is part of Azure Monitor. But before we go into that, let's do a quick, brief intro to me. My name's Joe Guadagno. You can reach me at any of the contact information that's here, my email, Twitter handle, my webpage, and then the stream. I stream 3 times a week, typically Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, around 8:30 Eastern time. If you follow me on Twitch, you'll get a notification whenever I start streaming. So a little bit about me. I'm a director of technology at Quicken Loans. I lead 5 software development teams building some of the technology we use at Rocket Mortgage for our public-facing sites. I organize an event similar to this called Desert Code Camp that happens once a year. Usually, it didn't happen last year, in the lovely town of Phoenix, Arizona, where I am from. I'm a Microsoft Developer Services MVP. That just means I do a lot of stuff like this for Microsoft and don't get paid for it. More important stat is I am a father of 2 and husband to 1. So enough about me. Let's go over the agenda. Today, we're going to kind of walk through applications insights. Now, you might see applications insights with a couple of different names because it's kind of morphed a little bit. It used to be all by itself as application insights. Then it got moved to this new umbrella of application telemetry called Azure Monitor. So some documentation still refers to it as application insights. Some of it refers to it as Azure Monitor, Azure Monitor Insights, Azure Monitor Application Insights. When I first started, it was called App Insights, so I built the presentation around that. Then we're going to look at how we can add application insights to lots of different projects. And I'm not just talking .NET projects. It can be added to mobile devices, as well as websites, both in ASP or Node or pretty much anything. Then we're going to look at kind of enhancing our application using application insights. We're going to walk through a ASP.NET Core app and see some additional metrics and things we can gather out of it. And then we're going to kind of walk through the portal and see everything that's provided. We might change the order a little bit. I think after we add applications insights, we go directly to the portal. So what's application insights? If you look at the formal definition of it, application insights is an extensible application performance management APM service for developers on multiple platforms. Essentially, it provides a way for you to see what's happening with your application, and that seeing could be lots of different things. So this is a screenshot of 4 or 5 different screens kind of combined together. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner where it says Game 1 abandoned. That shows some of the metrics and/or key events, as well as user telemetry. Below, where it says request 174, that's some of the logging that happens. That shows what pages people are going to. In this particular case, someone went to AI Connect, to.cloud app, blah, blah, blah. And to the right shows some details around that connection. So when we click the request, this is everything that happened. And we'll kind of look at some of this in more detail as we go, but it essentially gives you the opportunity to watch what's happening in your application, and in some cases, the dependencies, which we will see. So how does it work? It's a very complicated diagram here. So if you look at everything on the left, which is everything in the blue, this section here, that is kind of the basic application. So if you look at the top part, web apps, client apps, and/or web service, these are where you put the application insights agents. These things run for client apps and services. They run as SDKs. There's SDKs available for multiple platforms, which we'll see in a little bit. These agents will track HTTP requests, assuming we have a web app and web service. You can also do this. This could be a mobile app or a thick client application. The actual application doesn't matter, nor does it matter if it goes to a web service. But it starts to track dependencies throughout, and we'll see some of that in the working example. It can track connections to SQL servers, see how long it takes, what queries were run, etc. Any external services you have. So if you're calling out to an API that you don't own, it could at least see those calls, how long it takes, and the time it takes for it to come back, and any exceptions. And then any background services you have. So if you're running on your machine, it will watch the CPU counts, the memory usage, all that stuff. So all these things are sent with these little purple lines out to the Applications Insights aggregator, which sits within Azure. This aggregator is just constantly ingesting data that is coming from all these different sources. And it aggregates that and makes it available to anything in this green. So it can trigger alerts, which we'll take a quick look at. You can generate Power BI reports. There's Visual Studio integration, and now through a plugin in beta available in JetBrains Writer. And it exposes a REST API, and then you can actually, through continuous export, this one has an extra fee to it, you can export the data that you are tracking throughout your application. So that's cool. It's a basic high level what it does. Let's take a look at what it actually monitors. So it monitors your request rates, response times, and failure rates. So this is for a typical web application. We'll see how fast your site is running, how responsive it is, and both on the client side and the server side, which we'll see. And then any failures, if you get any 500s, 404s, etc., those will be tracked too. Checks the same for your dependencies. So if you have SQL dependencies, like I said, or API dependencies, those will be tracked also. It also tracks, or not attracts, it also tracks exceptions. So if you have any unhandled exceptions or ones that you actually handle, you can log those and it will show those throughout the application. For the client site, it shows you if you have a web UI, whether that be Angular, React, or ASP.NET Core, or even Blazor, will show you individual page views and the performance of those sites. I see, Ayub, you're not seeing it. Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Yeah,
I can see it. I can see it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So it'll track your page loads and views, and your question is, yes, Richard, Applications Insights can be used for logging and tracing, which we'll show in the examples towards the end of the slide, or towards the end of the presentation. We're just going to go through a couple of slides, and then we will actually look at some real code. Tracks AJAX calls, user and session counts, which we'll see. There's actually going to be homework for everyone, or actually homework while we're in the class or in the session, to actually play around with the website so that we can generate some user data. Then there's performance counters. It said if you use perfmon on Windows, this is very similar. Host diagnosis, so this can actually even run within your own data center on your own servers. You can install the Application Insights monitor, and it will track local hosted servers too. So if you have a combination of on-premise and off-premise as your overall solution, you can get those diagnoses also. And then you see trace logs from your application, as well as custom events and metrics. And we'll cover some of the custom events later on. So Application Insights, let's create a resource. Oh, why do I have that up there? It supports the .NET, and that's .NET Framework. I actually really need to update the slides. It's .NET, .NET Core, and .NET Framework, all varieties of it. Supports JavaScript natively, as well as Node through NPM packages or Yarn packages. Supports Java, and it supports mobile. It has an iOS SDK as well as an Android SDK. Plus, there's also plugins for a lot of CMS applications. So if you use WordPress or anything like WordPress, there are plugins for it. And we'll cover some of the known plugins with WordPress on the next slide. So if you're using WordPress, there are 2 plugins as of the writing of this slide. You can get to them via this link here. There's an Applications Insights one, which essentially, if you go to that URL, will port you to the plugin directory. All you have to do is give it the configuration or the instrumentation key, which we'll show you in a little bit, and it will add in all the scripts that are required. If you don't want to add in that plugin, but you have the very common header and footer plugin, which is listed here below, you can copy and paste the JavaScript file that's available on the Azure website, more so the Azure document site. And that JavaScript looks something like this. It's actually a lot longer than this, but this is all that you can fit on the screen. It's really 4 lines, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, but this function line goes on and on and on forever. But really the only important piece of it that you need here, and I'll show you where you can go and get that. We actually use it in the sample app that we're going to show. If you're using Node, you can replace NPM with the Yarn if you use Yarn instead, but you can add in the package Application Insights to your web app. So this will work if you're using React or Angular or an Electron app. And then you add in the constant app insights require, and then set up with your instrumentation key. So you replace this string here with the GUID, which represents your key. Now, I've been asked this before, so I will just come out with it. That instrumentation key really doesn't matter if someone shares it or if someone sees it. So you're going to openly see mine. The only downside to someone having it is if they feel like it, they could reuse that app key and just send in data from their apps. But there's really no benefit to that outside of potentially corrupting your insight data. Okay, so for those of you that want to play along, let's go and go to this URL. You can do HTTPS it also. I also posted it in the chat. And take a look at that site, play around with it, hit a couple of pages. We're going to go through and kind of look at that here. If you don't want to, there's already some data in there that I pre-populated just in case. So I put the link in the chat again, just in case of it there. So let's go and take a look at the portal. So I'm going to stop sharing my page. Oops, let's escape out of view and slideshow. Let's minimize you and let's get you up here. Hopefully you can still see my edge. So I think I'm sharing the whole screen. So yeah. Okay, cool. Teams gets a little flaky when you switch different things, especially when you go from PowerPoint to not. So this is the Azure portal. I just logged in and went to portal.azure.com, which is listed here, and there is a series of resources. So let's take a quick look at some of the resources. This is for my personal site. So we're going to kind of look through some of this, and I'll walk through the high level of a lot of what you see here. So at the side of this blade, there are lots of different options. So we have the overview, which gives you the basics. And let's walk through that before we go through any of the other tabs. So application dashboard, you can create one. If you have one that already exists in Azure, this just adds to it. To getting started, I'm going to open this up in a new window because this is actually going to show you where to get that JavaScript and everything else, and it doesn't allow right clicking. So we'll click on that once we're done. Search allows us to search through any of our logs. This goes to a log thing, which I will show later on. Monitor resource group allows us to, if you have a resource group set up in Azure, meaning you have a bunch of individual components like a SQL Server, a database, a app server, maybe Azure Key Vault, whatever you have. If you have them in a group, you can throw App Insights in there for the whole group, and it can kind of monitor all that together. And then the rest are typical feedback, adding it to favorites, rename it, and delete. This stuff on the side, the essentials, is pretty common for what it is. This is the resource group it's part of. This is the location it's in, the subscription ID, which I should probably not show that, but oh well. And then my instrumentation key. Now there's two different versions of it. There's the instrumentation key, which I can copy and paste into the JavaScript files that I have, or within the App Insights SDK, or countless other places. And the connection string is used for some of the newer ways of doing it, where you want to customize where the endpoint is. If you have your own private instance or government cloud, you can change the URL where it connects to. And then basic out of the box data shows these four things: any failed requests, server response time, server request, and availability. You're probably saying to yourself, Joe, your personal site gets no traffic. Sadly, that's partially true, but in this particular case, it's not true. This monitors the servers, and my site now, josephguadagno.net, is hosted in GitHub pages, so I don't monitor the actual server pages. But we'll see in a site like this one, which is my CodeCamp site, there are actual numbers in here. You can see here I had 3 failed requests at 10:52 a.m., which is about 30 minutes ago in my time. As you can see, UTC -7 had an hour, about 20 minutes ago, an error, and about 13 minutes ago. Then I can see the response time. So right around 11:50 or 10:52, when that error has, my response time for the site was actually pretty good. You can see on average, it's fairly good. It's under a second, except something went wrong here. So I can click on this little dot and see more about it. See the number of requests I get in the last 24 hours, where this is based on. There were 104 requests, and this is the overall availability. I'm not tracking the servers because this particular server is doesn't have availability groups to it, so you won't see that. So let's go back to my site. We'll kind of walk through some of this. Actually, let's skip this and go to the Application Insights, the Contoso app that we created. So let's go here, App Insights, and if people have been playing along, this site should actually have some data now, which it does. And a bunch of people clicked on a page that is purposely broken to see. And we can see that around 1:17 or 11:17, so about 5 minutes ago, when I said start clicking, we started getting requests. And we have around 34 people that clicked on it. Cool. And the same thing with availability here. So let's take a look at it. The application map is going to give us a high-level visio of the application. So here we see we have 44 views of the app that went to call this service intro to app insights dash Contoso. It's just the application or the app service within Azure. Of the 75 calls that were made, 58 of them went directly to the database, and there was over a 15% failure. That's because a lot of you probably clicked on the About page, which is purposely broken for later on in the demo. But we can see here that instantly we get a big red flag that something's up with our database, or something's up with the service, more so something's up with the database. If I click on that, I can see a lot more issues. So we got a status code of 207 that had a count of 9. Some of this was me actually getting the demo ready earlier, but we're going to drill more into those exceptions in a little bit. Smart detection. This really won't work for this particular site because I only really created it yesterday, but it needs 7 or so days of notice of instrumentation data, and then we'll start figuring out that, hey, you seem to have a problem with your SQL server, or you seem to have a problem with your website around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You might want to look at scaling it, etc. Live metrics is cool. Once the countdown happens in 10 seconds, you'll actually see real-time usage. So if you still have another tab open, start clicking around and we can see that people are actually on the site. So right now, there is someone that just clicked and 2 people have clicked the About page. And as you can see, that telemetry is starting to come in that people are using the site right now. We have our dependencies that are averaging 2 seconds, which doesn't seem right. We get a couple of failures that are happening. We're using about 60 meg of memory. Our CPU is super underutilized, which is good. And our exception rate is not terrible, meaning that there isn't more than 1 exception on average a second. And then we can see other stuff down here, the server name it's happening on. Then there's the transaction search. So this allows you some more abilities. This gets to your question, Richard, about the tracing and the logging. So within this Contoso app that's on there, I added some additional tracing in it. So I'm going to pick for the last hour. So I picked for the last 24 hours or last 4 hours. You'll probably get some of my testing work. So let's see what we got here for the last hour. So it's going to go back, and you can see that I probably ran it around 10:45 to get everything started. 11:45, someone clicked, or 11:05, someone clicked on the link, and then a bunch of people started hitting it around the 11:17 mark. So we look here, we see availability, again, because this is not multi-tenant or multi-available, we're going to get that as a 0. There are 6 other categories here. Requests, we've had 108 requests. We've had 10 exceptions, 79 individual page views, 30 trace messages. No one clicked on the button below that says, please don't click on me. So that's kind of a bummer, but there's usually always one person that clicks on that. And then we made 74 calls to a dependency. So then you can kind of loop through all this. We can see someone called the page, the home page. Someone went to the instructors page. Someone saw the error page that was generated. But let's take a look at this instructors page. So I'm going to go and double click on first. Where is it? Single click. You got to get it just right sometimes. And we're going to view what's called the end-to-end transactions page. So this is going to show us everything that was involved. So if we look here, there's a lot that was here in this time frame. But when you actually click on an item, we have something called an operation ID. So Application Insights groups things together. Some places call it a correlation ID. It's a very common thing. In App Insights, you'll see a mixture of the words correlation ID and operation ID, but they started moving more towards the operation ID. And that's just a randomly assigned number that kind of groups everything together. So you see here we have an event that happened, and that is the intro to App Insights Contoso instructors event. And it pretty much just summed it up. There was a page view to this page. Someone browsed from Edge 87 in the lovely state of Pennsylvania, in Philly. Page load time took 154 milliseconds. And then they came here from the URL /departments. They went from departments and then viewed the individual instructors there, which is cool. I don't know why it didn't actually show the database call for it, but it should have showed the incoming dependencies. So let's go and take a look at another one. Oh, none of my, oh, here, let's go. So let's go here and look at, let's look at this request. So this request here, you'll see someone went and hit the edit button. They came from Chrome and they're in Virginia. So nice of you, whoever did it, which ended up getting the favorite icon and getting that, but that's not what I wanted to see. I wanted to get an actual database call. There should be a, where's a view? Normally there's a view here where at least one person views it. It should be in the instructor view. Let's try that again. Where'd my screen go? You guys still see the screen? The screen share looked like it disappeared.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can still see it.
Yeah, you can see.
Okay. Something happened in the screen on the side, just kind of disappeared. So where are my dependencies? It should have a list of the dependencies here. And that could be because I might have turned that off when I published it. But we get to see the overall look through, and I can filter it here. Let's just do dependencies, and I can see all the dependencies I have. Just takes a minute to refresh here.
Joe, while you're waiting, there's a hand raised
Oh, yeah, sure.
from Richard.
Hey, Joe, this is Richard. Yeah. I'm definitely curious about tracing a log. I know you said you showed there. What we're really talking about is like when you customize logging, like you say, you tell it that, hey, I got here, I got there, kind of thing, or the parameters passed in. Like, can you set that up? Is that automatically set up, or you have to actually add code to do that, or is that different? Because I've used app service logging recently, and it seems like there's some huge limitations with that. So I was actually thinking about trying to use App Insight, but it seemed like a lot more involved. So
yes, App Insights will give you that connectivity automatically, and it will have the parameters. I don't have any with this demo app, so otherwise you would see it, but you can see here we had a full call to instructors index, and then I can customize it. So if actually, I'll just do it right now since no one did it, and we can see it, and I'll show you the example of how we actually do it. jjg.me/
talk about the don't click me button.
yeah, click on the don't click me button.
I actually clicked it a few times a while back. I'm not too sure why you're not.
Okay, so I'll pull up that event, and you can see the actual instructions for it. Oh, you know what? Let's see, custom events. There we go. So this is a custom event. We had 3 people that actually clicked on it, And if we view it, you can see any of the details that we added to it. It was done from here, and the event name we called it just happened to be button push, but we can call it anything. So you can add a lot of that relatively easily. And in the slide deck, I cover all those examples. So we'll get to that in like 2 minutes, I think. We kind of already touched base on this one, the exception. So I can click here and see these 500s. If you're using Visual Studio 2017 or 2019, you can install the Snapshot Debugger and add that to App Insights, and App Insights will record what's happening as a snapshot and allow you to replay what happened during that request on your local dev box. So you don't get that, well, it works on my machine. You can actually see what happened, pull down the data onto your local box, and then kind of step through it and see all the variables. I'm not going to cover that because that's a lot more lengthy demo. So if I click here in 27, I can see all of them, which is most of the about pages. This was an error when I first started playing around with it, so ignore the index ones. If I click on the end-to-end details, I'll see the request that was made. I'll also see the exception that was made. So I get a SQL exception, invalid column name discriminator, invalid column name, enrollment date. And that's because some EF, when the demo was first created, it was using a framework by its entity framework OG or original, and now it's using a framework core, and that particular SQL language that's in there is not supported. Let's see what else. We're not going to cover the performance. We kind of looked at the metrics a little bit. This allows you to create more of the metrics like you were talking about, Richard, where you can actually see the reports. There's some basics out of App Insights, but also some log-based metrics. And these are things that you can upload or have it as part of your app. So once we get to the actual coding demo, I use nlog for it, but you can use pretty much any logging provider and send stuff directly from App Insights. If you're using a web client, here's a bunch of items around. So you can see the number of users that are currently using the site, and that works both in web and not. So there are 25 users within the last 24 hours. The number of sessions that are currently live, I believe. So it's the number of people connected. So there are 24 people that still have the browser open. Any events that get fired and so on. So if you're using something like Google Analytics or some kind of analytics package, you can do a lot of that, including A/B testing, seeing how long people are on your page, etc., straight from here. And then the last thing I'll cover, or two more things I'll cover, and then we get into the code, the continuous export here, where you can export that to storage, blob storage, and you can get the logs there so you can parse them your own way or add them to your own Power BI or whatever your on-premise thing is. API access, if you want to write your own visualizations, this will get you a key that you can make API calls directly to the App Insights REST endpoints. And then work items is cool. If you're using a tracking system like Azure DevOps, GitHub, Jira, I believe is supported. There's a bunch of them that are supported. I only have these two installed, but if you go to Marketplace, you can add Jira. What else? There's like 4 or 5 of them. If I put in the connection information to it right from App Insights, so where I had that bug here, which if we go back to the failures, if we click on this, any one of these bugs, I can actually create a work item. It's suggesting that one. I don't know, let's see if anyone saw that. So right here, it's suggesting this one because it's had a lot of exceptions right now. If I go here, there is a button that appears right here that gives me the ability, actually here it is right now, create work item. So I can create a GitHub issue or an Azure DevOps work item bug with all this detail directly and then track it right from here. And I think that's all I wanted to show on the portal right now. Everything else is just your typical Azure stuff. So let's take a look at the code. Let's see, we got about 15 minutes left. So let's take a look quickly how to add it to a Java app, and then we'll kind of work on Visual Studio. So this application is really no longer relevant, but it's a quick sample that I can change without affecting it. So here we have App Insights and a App Insights ID. This one is old. I kind of pretty much change it constantly every time I do this demo. Let's go to the App Insights portal, and one of the ways to create it, I'm going to go here, choose new, and then you have to select a subscription. So I'm going to choose that subscription and do my resource group of presentations, and then give it a name, Intro to jQuery Mobile. And the name really doesn't matter as much outside of fitting the guidelines that's here. And then indicate whether you want classic mode or workspace mode. For ease of use, I'm just going to hit classic mode. Workspace-based mode gives you a logging workspace. So if you are logging with more things than just like the web app, you can track logging for your storage portal, your Azure storage, or your Key Vault usage. So you create a workspace to kind of group everything together. For this, I don't have all that, so I'm just going to create classic. Click review, click create, and then in a couple of seconds, it is done. While we're here, Microsoft would love our feedback. Luckily, App Insights portals are quickly. So I'm going to copy out this code and paste it into the doc. So let's go here. Now, if I paste this here and I commit those changes, I can start getting code for it. Edit App Insights. And let's click it and let's push it. Now, once this builds, it uses GitHub Actions to build and deploy the site. I'll be able to start getting telemetry. But I promised to show you where I got all this SQL script from. So let's take a look at that. And this I can close because we no longer need it. If you click on the Getting Started here, it pops up this Azure Monitor. And then you get down to here to any one of these. So I'm going to choose Node.js. And then there's this Configure App Insights. Now, it used to show you right on the portal where you would literally just click that Getting Started and give you all those, but they took that away, unfortunately. So right here is the code if you're using it, but we are doing we're not using Node for this example. We are using a web app. So let's go to the web app, and then you'll see this create HTML, which has the code here. So you literally copy and paste this section and replace your instrumentation key goes here with it. I really wish they didn't get rid of it here, but you used to just click on this and then show you all that right there. Let's go and see how we edit to Visual Studio or via Visual Studio. So let's take a new app. So I am going to do create new application. And then I'm going to pick ASP Core Web App, and then do Web Application. I don't know why it defaults that directory. I never put it in there. Click Next. And then once I choose which type, it used to actually give you the option right here to put that in. So let's go and create that and then show you how to add it. Once you do it, it gives you the ability to click on these connected services and see it. It's going to give us a long list of dependencies. Actually, there are none right now, which makes it easier. So let's go and add one. We can choose Azure App Insights, click Next, and then work through that. But we're going to do that for an existing application. No sense in creating the resource if we're not going to use it. So I have a resource here called Contoso University. Now, Contoso University, you've probably seen the demos a zillion times on it, and that's what you've been working on. So let's go and see what I did to edit there, and then we'll walk through some of the custom examples. So there are several different ways to get to it. I can right-click here, and there is a add, and then connected service, applications insights, telemetry. There's a menu item here under tools or build. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I usually do this way. It's just easier for me to remember. Add applications insights, telemetry, and then I get to choose which one I want. So I'm going to choose App Insights, and then it's going to give me the ability to, oh great, but I had to re-enter my credentials. I was like, I just did that. Yeah, apparently I do. It's going to look at my account right now, my Microsoft account, Guadagno at Hotmail. In the Azure sponsorship subscription has 5 different App Insights instances. So this is the one I want. So I'm going to click Next, and then it creates that connection string for me. You can choose none or create local secrets file. The right thing to do is create local secrets file, but we're going to kind of share that a little bit. This is where what it's going to do. It's going to update the code to add the new dependencies. So since this is an ASP.NET Core application, it's going to add the registering of the App Insights telemetry, add the appropriate NuGet packages, update the project to support those, change the secret store to add in the App Insights telemetry key, and then add settings in the app settings. So once I click Finish, once it's done, this is pretty common to fail to configure code because I already have parts of it in here. So let's see if I can reconfigure it. This happened before too, so great. That's because my Azure account magically needed to be re-authenticated, which is lovely. So now I have to grab my Authenticator app to sign in. I literally signed in like 20 minutes ago. Pardon the interruption as I sign in. And if you already don't have it, you should use the Authenticator for a second sign in, especially with something as critical as your Azure services. For me, I use Azure and Hotmail, so I make sure that I have it all there. Click Next, and let's try it again. I want to say it just happened to time out right when I was applying the update for dependencies. Yep, it timed out just as I was doing it. Go figure what the odds of that. Don't worry about the SQL Server. We're not going to really republish the application. So now that it's done, I should see a couple of things here. So we got the Azure App Insights instrumentation key, which is that 74D number that's in there. You'll notice there is a dependency, or sorry, connected service, which lists that I have the Azure Applications Insights. If I click Getting Started, it takes me to that page to get me ready for it. And since we only have 6 minutes left, we are going to quickly look at adding it. So I'm going to open up the working example and walk through the remaining code that actually has it working and added. Once you add in the package, everything else is pretty easy. Where's my projects? Contoso working. And let's open up this solution. We can save you. So here are a couple of changes you will see. So in the end log, because I'm using end log, this gets to your question, Richard. I add in this new target called Microsoft Application Insights end log target. And then I hard code the key. There is actually a way to doing it where you don't have to hard code the key. I just, for sake of brevity, I did not want to show it, but there's a configuration section you can get, so you don't have to have your key in 3 different places. And then add App Insights here with your logging level. So this is the same for Log4net, Serial Log, and pretty much every major logging platform in both .NET and Java, as well as Android. So right now I'm saying send everything to App Insights. You don't want to do this in a real production app because you are just going to flood it. Basically, you'd want something in info or higher, but since this is a demo and I want to see everything, we have the publication there, or we have it going to trace. So here we have this add application insights telemetry in our configure services. And I believe that is all we needed to do to get it ready. So in the controller, let's go take a look at the controller for our home controller, because that's the one that had that push button in here. We added 2 lines of code here, the private read-only telemetry client and the logger. So we pass in the telemetry client, that gets populated through calling this add applications insights telemetry. It automatically registers it with the dependency injection service. Then down here we get an instance of the telemetry client, and then you have these different events that you can do. You have track availability, track dependency, track event, track exception, track metric, and track page view. So if you're using a single page application framework like Angular or React, you can actually call track page view to do it, since the actual URL does not change. They recommend you don't use track metric unless you're sending summaries of metrics. They recommend more so you do track event, which is what I am doing here. Tracking event, button pushed. You can do track dependency if there's any other dependencies that it doesn't resolve. It knows pretty much anything out of the box within the .NET framework. So SQL servers, Oracle, anything that uses ADO.NET or Entity Framework, it can manage those. And any HTTP calls that go out. So to get to your question, Richard, in here, we added a logger app.logwarn, which is with a custom message, and you can actually add in your own instrumentation to it too. I can do a new and then create a dynamic object with it. ID equals 1, 2, 3, 4. Event type equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then this telemetry here will be sent up along with this message. So when you view it in App Insights, you'll see all this data going across. So that's App Insights in a nutshell. Let's go and do this. Let's start the slide from here, which is this button, and then here. Now let's switch. You don't want to see all the notes. So these are the two common ones that I've used, the log4net appender and the nlog. There are tons of them. If you just search for Microsoft.App Insights in .NET, you can see them. Most logging providers have it. They have helpers for MVC, console apps, web API, web jobs, as well as the typical .NET applications. And then this is a quick summary of those tracking, track page views, track events, track metrics, etc. But more so important, if you want more information, there's a plethora of sites that you can go to. These are all short URLs, so grab your screen pasting or screen snipping tool, and you can copy out any of these to get more information on what App Insights is, documentation, how you set it up. App Insights Status Monitor is what I was talking about. If you have an on-prem server that you want to monitor, you can still use App Insights for it. That's all I got. Hopefully you got something out of it, and I'll leave up my contact information in case you have any other additional questions.
Can I ask one quick question, Joe?
Guadagno.
Mind if I ask you one question real quick, Joseph?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I noticed when you were adding in the telemetry to the code itself, there was an option that for non-Azure hosted apps. I missed the beginning of the presentation if you covered that. Is that a thing? Like, is that easy? What does that do actually?
That was the status mon is one way you can do it on servers, but if you go to this slide here, all the items listed here, this can be anything. The web client app, web service could be anything you want. It doesn't have to be hosted. The web app I particularly had was hosted in Azure, but if you double check, where is it? These are the supported languages out of the box with different ways to edit. So if we go back, let me stop sharing. If we go back to here, you can see there are different ways to monitor, both in node-rich worlds. So you can do a hosted on-prem service. The only difference between the demo I had, it was hosted there, so I got server telemetry out of it. But if you're hosting it locally and just want to use App Insights for it, there's no difference in the code. The only addition is you have to install that Application Insights monitor for your server if you want like CPU usage and memory usage. But otherwise, the manage and configure go through a lot of that. And
Awesome.
here in the overview, which is this page here, covers how you can create the resources as well as add profilers and everything else to your toolkit. So it doesn't
Thanks. I
require you to
apologize if
be
you covered that
accurate.
before. I came in a little bit late. Thanks.
No worries. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the event. I don't think I'm the last session, or if I am, hopefully you had a great event. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out to me on any one of these ways. If you like what you see, follow me on Twitter and/or on stream. I broadcast 3 times a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, typically at 8:30 Eastern.